Korea's southern port city of Busan is hoping to bring home the 2030 World Expo, and a delegation from the International Bureau of Expositions is currently in the city to assess its prospects prior to November's vote for the winning host city. So what are Busan's merits as a potential host of the 2030 World Expo? What efforts are underway to raise its chances of winning the bid? And what's the latest with regard to the competition that Busan faces? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Today we address Busan's chances of hosting the 2030 World Expo as observed by our panel of foreign correspondents. For more, I have Andres Sanchez Braun here in the studio. Andres, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Right. I also have Nicolas Rocca with us. Nicolas, it's a pleasure as well.
Good to be back.
Right, Andres, we'll start with you then. First of all, let's begin perhaps with a few words about Busan's appealing factors and perhaps its merits as a potential host of the 2030 World Expo.
Well, I think on the one side there's the candidacy project itself. I'd say the motto is transforming our world, navigating towards a better tomorrow. So I believe this is actually the first time an international expo would have a theme or a main theme or a secondary theme that actually has to deal with climate change. So that's a first. That's important, I think, given the current situation we're in. Then there's the very interesting fact of where the site would be if the expo is awarded to Busan. It would take place in this Central Bay area where the North Port is located right now, and that's a huge space. That's like 3.43 million square, like 343 hectares, which is not the largest expo ever, but it's very big, and it would be happening in the central part of a city, which is not common. I think the last time we saw something like this was in the Shanghai Expo in 2010, but most expos are always, the sites are always built in the outskirts because of logistics, right? Then, of course, we have BTS as an ambassador of Busan 2030, and that's always something that can draw young generations. And we know BTS is, compromised with, things like climate change or a more egalitarian society, etc. And then, apart from that, I think there's something very interesting about Busan. Unlike Riyadh or Rome, the other candidate cities, there's also Odessa, but both Odessa and Busan are not capital cities. And I think this is interesting in Korea with, the fact that the Sudokwon area, the Seoul capital region, basically absorbs more than half of the Korean population and has absorbed most strong investment since the 60s. This is a great chance to actually rebalance, the regions in Korea, and I think the project, the candidate city project, has actually underlined this.
Right, and that being said, Nicolas, what do you believe are Busan's appealing traits?
Well, I mean, it's a very lively city. It's known to be that way. I've been a few times for professional reason, others for leisure reason. When I went professionally, I've covered the Busan International Film Festival with Andres. It's also one of the important things. It shows that Busan is able to organize such events. I mean, I feel it's a pretty unique city in Korea. There's a lot of landmarks. There's also the fact that the city, is divided in sort of different islands with the bridges to go through. It feels like there's different city inside the same city. There's also a culture of, food culture with a lot of good things to eat over there. So it's a city I feel is very warm-hearted as a whole, and it has a lot of appeal. As Andres mentioned, BTS is behind the candidature, but not only BTS. It feels like it's the only bid where all the country is kind of pushing behind. We know that Samsung is behind it, SK is behind it, Lee Jung-jae, BTS, everybody, the mayor, even the mayor of Seoul, when he went on a trip to Europe, he was also advocating for the bid. So I think that's also one of the important aspects of Busan.
Right. Andres, speaking with Arirang News this week, Busan Mayor Park Heong-joon was confident about his city's prospects of winning the bid to host the 2030 World Expo. Now, I understand you've also interviewed him on quite a number of occasions. What more can you share with us?
Well, actually, we've interviewed Mayor Park and also Vice Mayor for Political Affairs, Lee Sung-won, and I remember Nico being there also in that interview. I think what is most important here, coming from the metropolitan government, is what's going to get done in Busan, regardless of the city landing the expo or not. I think there's going to be a certain set of projects that are really important and are going to really change the face of the city. One I already mentioned is the fact that the site where the expo would take place is this central bay where the North Port is now. Regardless of the city getting the expo, the North Port is going to be moved to the southern west part of the city, to Gadok Island. And that is actually going to liberate so much space, around 100 square meters, I believe. And that, suddenly you have a fabulous space to create new residential areas, new green areas, new retail areas. Like, it's a really unique chance for a city as big as Busan suddenly to have this opportunity to redraw itself and reimagine itself towards the future. In such a central area. Then there's going to be a new airport, the mayor confirmed, and it's also going to be built in Gadok Island because, of course, Kimche, the one that serves the city, is too small, so they're trying to get a bigger one for making it a bigger transport logistics hub. I think even, we've discussed some projects with him. They're a little out there in the future, but, we actually asked him about this tunnel that would link the city of Busan and the Japanese city of Fukuoka. And of course, it's been it's been a project that people have talked about for ages, and, it's still a little out there, but he said, you know what, if bilateral relations keep improving and if things go the right way, why not? This could actually happen in the future.
Right,
I think it's very interesting.
Right. Nicolas, a delegation from the International Exposition Bureau, as we mentioned earlier, the delegation itself is currently in Busan for an on-site inspection. And that being said, 16 districts over there in the southern port city of Busan have 67, I believe, expo-related events. Now, we don't have time to cover all of them, but could you tell us a bit about these events?
Yes, I think the aim is to show that there's public support behind the bid. And for instance, they were welcomed, the members of the delegation, they were welcomed at the train station by a couple of thousands of citizens apparently singing yesterday. I mean, yeah, the program, as you mentioned, is huge. For Namgu, there's going to be events using lion mass dance. Busan Chingu, there's going to be different events near the riverside, some festivals related to the exposition. For, of course, Hyundai-gu and the beach. On the beach, there's going to be a lot of promotional videos of the expo. Nearby, there will also be some different landmarks of the exposition. There will be some sculptures to honor them, such as, of course, the Eiffel Tower that was built in the 1899 Paris exposition, and that is still here today. The other gus, I don't want to, forget any, but there's Dongnae-gu, Sasan-gu, Gijang-gu, where there's going to be walkathons, where the citizens are going to be able to walk, some flash mobs, some different tours to, maybe present a bit more thoroughly the different landmarks of the city. So yeah, there's an important program, and I think the aim is really to show, and that's maybe also one of the difference with the other candidature, and that's probably also because Busan is not a capital city. The citizens and the popular support is probably higher because it means more probably for citizens of a city that is not already amongst the most well-known in the world to put their city out there and to promote the city. So I think, yeah, it's a smart move from the candidacy team. Right,
I suppose it would be a great time to be in Busan right now, this week that is. Andres, I hear one prerequisite for selection is that the bidding city must solve its environmental problems. That being said, what has or is Busan doing on that front?
Well, on the environmental side, the bigger issue right now, as we all know probably, is the bad air. This is something that not only affects Busan, of course, it affects mostly all of Korea right now, the famous fine dust problem. When it comes to the metropolitan government, they've, of course, projected to open up new green spaces, etc. Also, I believe that by the end of 2024, there's going to be like 720 new hydrogen public buses running in Busan, which is a lot of them. That's most of the buses, I believe. And as you know, a hydrogen engine basically transforms hydrogen into electricity, and the byproduct is basically water, steam, or vapor, right? So there's no emission there. But then also, the Ministry of the Environment and the Ministry of Trade, Energy, Industry should do their part as part of the framework that is national in when it comes to reducing fine dust. Things like, for example, upgrading the technical requirements in a lot of areas. Let's say, for example, fishing. Busan is a big fishing port as well. So all these regulations regarding fishing vessels have to be looked at this year, actually. But also, cooling systems and heating systems for buildings, restaurants, all that kind of emissions have to actually be upgraded this year. So I think it should improve air quality, not only in Busan, but in the whole country.
Right, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Nicolas, Busan Mayor Park Heong-joon claims Busan will write a new chapter in the World Expo history by hosting the event both in its physical form as well as in its virtual form, and also by offering visitors to Busan a surreal convenience using new technologies. Could you explain this for us?
Well, it wouldn't be a Korean Expo if there wasn't a little bit of metaverse. Wouldn't be. I mean, yeah, this country is prone to offer new technologies. Seoul City is offering already some metaverse possibilities for the citizens. So I think it also goes with the image of the country to focus on that. And so yeah, the plan of the expo is to enable citizens around the world to visit the different pavilions through the metaverse. I think it's a great idea because I'm pretty sure Korea has the capacity to do so, first of all, and then coming to a World Expo, it's very costly. Not everybody can do it, so it speaks for the inclusion it's going to be able to offer. I'm not sure it will prevent people that really want to come to do so, but it's more for people that are maybe curious around the world, but that can't afford it, the possibility to do so. For the people that would be lucky enough to be able to come, there's also a vast program. There's going to be apparently UAM drones flying in the air to deliver packages. Also, in order to manage the crowd in the most efficient way, the plan is to create AI avatars that are going to wait in the queue for you so that you don't have to show up in person and wait, and to make the most of your time there. There will also be AI avatars that are going to be able to plan your tour so that you know which pavilion to visit first, which one next. So yeah, a wide range of options. That being said, 2030 is a far, it's 7 years ahead. We've seen technology improving at such a high rate that who knows what innovation actually will be in place there. Probably something we can't even imagine already. So yeah, I think, Busan.
I would have to agree with you right there. And in fact, I'm looking forward to these avatars who wait in line for you and plan your day. Now, Andres, in an exclusive interview with Arirang News, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo said Busan has all the traits symbolic of South Korea. To what extent do you agree with his assessment of the southern city?
I actually I couldn't agree more, if I might. I actually was lucky enough to be in Busan with Prime Minister Han and Mayor Park very recently, and we talked about this while visiting Gamcheon, the Gamcheon area. And yes, they were pointing out what a great legacy in that sense Busan is. We're always talking, especially overseas, about the miracle of the Han River, right, regarding Seoul and Korea's economic development. But I think we can actually perfectly talk about the miracle of the Nakdong River as well, if you think about it. And this was something that we discussed with the mayor and with the prime minister. Busan at one point was basically receiving refugees in the thousands during the war. We might remember the Busan perimeter defense. And from there, you know, the city has transformed. It's actually a pretty good symbol of how the country is, I believe, the only one in the world so far that has turned from net aid receiver to net donor. I mean, the transformation of the city from places like Gamcheon, where, you know, they took in refugees, they made it their home. Places like 국제시장, the international market, which is actually a place where many of these refugees could actually set shop and start selling things for a living. Yeah, most of them contraband back in the day, but still, it speaks tons of how Busan is a very welcoming city. And also a very international one. We see that in the city's Chinatown, for example, or for instance, Haeundae Beach, which you spoke of. I believe up until the 60s, Haeundae wasn't even a part of Busan City per se. It was part of Dongnae-gun, when Dongnae was actually a county separate from the city. And now it's actually the showcase for the city. Like, you know, you have this beautiful beach full of tall buildings. So it speaks tons of how, you know, the city has turned from this place welcoming refugees trying to survive into this powerhouse now for tourism, for economic activity. And I think also both the mayor and the prime minister have underlined how important it is, if the expo takes part in Busan, how Korea will be able to actually share the experience of turning, you know, into a fully developed country.
Right. Nicolas, beyond Busan now, let's very briefly touch upon Busan's rivals. What can you tell us about Odessa, Riyadh and Rome, as our Andres mentioned earlier?
Well, I think for Odessa, there's a lot of question mark. Obviously, it's a southern port city in Ukraine. It has been bombed multiple times during the war. So I think it would be a bit uncertain for the bid to be here, even if the symbol would probably be interesting. It seems unlikely that they pick Odessa. Rome's candidature appears maybe a bit as a mystery also, because Milan was 2015 the city that hosted the expo. I think the biggest contender is definitely Riyadh. Riyadh and Busan are the two favorites to host the 2030 expo. Riyadh is particularly eager to host it because in 2020 it was in Dubai. It was expressed as a success. So I think, yeah, Riyadh is really the biggest contender. Saudi Arabia, as we all know, is the country that has the biggest oil reserve in the world. There have been being some intense lobbying. Mohammed bin Salman, the prime minister now, and Prince heir to the throne of the realm of Saudi Arabia, has been going around the different countries when he was making state visit. He was putting this forward. He's got the support also of different Muslim countries, African countries. He also earned the support of other countries, such as France, when he visited the President Macron. One of the arguments they put forward, of course, is the capacity to change the city very quickly because of the financial, the means that they have in order to do that. They want to create a new building that would be 20 times 20 Empire State Building. A big cube that would fit about 20 Empire State Buildings. So they have the capacity to change the city quickly. That being said, of course, maybe the reputation of Saudi Arabia isn't the best. Maybe the public opinion is not in favor. I mean, yeah, but anyhow, it is, I think, the biggest contender to Busan's bid.
Right, and we'll know about the winning city in November, of course, then. And in the meantime, then, Andres, on a personal level, are there any suggestions that you care to share to raise, perhaps, Busan's chances of hosting the 2030 World Expo? I
actually can't think of any. I'd just say, keep it true to its spirit. I think the candidate city project was very solid and knew their strong points and have pitched the idea pretty nicely. I think Busan is a very appealing city. You've said it, Nico, before. It's a very welcoming city. It's not a capital city. This is important. And as someone who comes from Spain, we actually hosted the World Expo in 1992 in the city of Seville. That was an important driving force for not only the region's transformation, but the whole country. That was the reason we built the first high-speed railway line to Seville. So I kind of know how important this is when a city that is not a capital city gets to hold an event like this. So I think they're doing a pretty good job, and I think their appeal is not a lot of money in this case. It's just how welcoming and wonderful the city is.
Right. And speaking of that, Nicolas, as Andres mentioned earlier, Busan's slogan for the World Expo reads, "Transforming our world, navigating toward a better future." That being said, what more perhaps could Busan, or South Korea for that matter, do to pave perhaps a more viable path to a better future?
I think there's a raising consciousness in Korea that there's a need to act on climate change. It's really changing. We can see the new generation is really taking those issues, very seriously. I mean, one aspect that maybe could change is the relationship to innovation, right? This country is very prone to innovation and in favor of most innovation, always creating new products. If we take, for instance, I mentioned already the UAM, the flying drones to transport people, or merchandise, or electric cars, etc. It's a country that is going forward on those aspects. But we need to consider also sometimes take a step backward and think, do we need this innovation? Because even though it's getting better, for instance, if we take electric cars, yes, we reduce the emissions once we're in the car, but beforehand, in order just to produce it, it costs a lot to the environment, and maybe change a little bit, even if, like, for instance, Seoul or Busan public transportation system is very good and very efficient. Maybe be able to change a bit the mindset of people in order to, for instance, I don't know, the ideal situation would be, for instance, to ban cars from city centers and focus on public transportation. I mean, I think it's, this kind of mindset is something that maybe Korea could work on in the future if they want to, if this country wants to take, the next step in order to adapt to the very near and intense climate change crisis that we're facing.
Right, and very briefly speaking, Andres, keeping in mind what Nicolas has just said, do you suppose Korea can afford to do more in terms of raising awareness within members of the public about the importance of ensuring a more sustainable society?
I think they can do, and they've already done. Let's not forget that, for example, Korea is already one of the countries that recycles more.
Especially for food waste.
And I think Korea caught on the whole recycling culture amazingly fast. So definitely, not only are authorities, but also Korean society capable of, getting on board all these new, and I think, eventually, yes, probably we'll probably see at one point certain areas in big Korean cities where private cars are banned. We're seeing that in Europe already. We're seeing that in many cities, so why not? Yeah, sure.
Right, of course. We'll keep our fingers crossed for that as well then. All right, Andres, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you so much for having us.
Nicolas, thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks for the invitation.
Right, well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow, that is Thursday.